a particularly strange problem developing in South Africa. We've got many young doctors that are unemployed in South Africa. As bizarre as that might sound, that's the reality on the ground. And I think behoves our politicians to look at that urgently.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
Welcome to the Relocated South African. A few episodes ago, I sat down with Graham Cosgrave. He recruits South African doctors for Ireland. The conversation was about why doctors leave South Africa. Today, I'm flipping the question. My guest is Dr. Casper Joubert. He qualified at Stellenbosch, worked in Dubai and Mauritius, and then when most South African doctors are looking for the exit, he came home. He's now in his final year of specialist training in occupational medicine. Casper, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jan. It's nice to be here. It's sort of a autumn evening at 6:00, so nice and dark outside. I'm a bit jealous of the fact that you're sitting in beautiful Portugal, but it's a pleasure to be here.
We've had our winter. You're in Cape Town, is that right?
I'm in Cape Town.
Yeah. Okay, just a quick history. Where are you from? Where did you study? And the key question, did you always want to be a doctor?
Born in Natal, but raised in a small town called Bredasdorp in the Western Cape. My sort of undergraduate studies took place at Stellenbosch University, finished up here. Did I always want to be a doctor? I suspect, like most families or traditional families, you sort of fairly adapt at school and then you get sort of four choices, engineering, medicine, law, and accounting. My middle sister is also a physician, and I thought to myself, well, this doesn't look too bad. And that's really how I got into it. And I can happily report that after, almost 18 plus years since I've been graduated, I really, really fancy my job. It's something that gives me a lot of purpose and fulfillment. I will also say it's something that I learned to love. It's not something, that started off like that. There were quite a bit of resentment in the early years.
Excellent. Well, so let's go back to the first time you left. You left South Africa for Dubai in 2012. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my wife's a physician as well, we finished our internship in Natal and came back to Cape Town for a year, did our community service. And at that stage, it was really a situation of deciding, what are you going to do next? Are you going to specialize? Because the working circumstances were, I would say, challenging within the public sector. So the way to get out of that was to typically specialize or go immediately into private. And at that stage, I think we both felt that we were still a little bit undercooked and, sort of freshly out of training, and we didn't feel quite ready for either of those pathways. And we started looking for opportunities abroad, always wanted to travel and see the world. And we also looked specifically at destinations that would accept our qualifications without any examinations. And lo and behold, the Middle East popped up, and it's a small community. We got hold of some people, and I think it was all in all 3 or 4 months since making the decision, and then we landed up in Dubai.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Did you ever consider Ireland? Because that's the same thing that Graham was saying, that they recruit doctors for Ireland and for Dubai. But he said that that's the main reason why South Africans go there, but also it's quite a nice community. Was that ever on your horizon?
Ireland has been a consideration throughout the career, and it's been on the cards several times throughout my career. Obviously, the fact, as I said, that we're 2 doctors in the household makes it easy. In when I finished Australia and Canada were quite popular choices. We missed the boat to go to England. At that stage, it was, I think, a year or two before me that they closed the GMC registration for us without examinations. And whilst we did consider those countries, we always felt that we wanted to do something a little bit outside of the norm, and also sort of explore places that perhaps in our mind wasn't necessarily something that you go and start a whole new life, but rather sort of use as an exploration or an adventure. And so the Middle East was never supposed to be as long as it turned out to be. It was always supposed to be, let's say, the land equivalent of a cruise ship rotation for 2 years.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people I speak to in Dubai all say the same thing. I had an interview with a guy who's been there for 10 years, and he said, but the problem is, where do you go next? Because you can't become a permanent resident there, or you can't get a passport. So people move either to Australia or other destination. So it is quite amazing that you stayed there so long. Just a question: was your wife? Did you get into the same hospital? Did you work together, or how did that work?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate throughout our careers to sort of always be placed together and literally work together in most of our career. The Dubai was straight from the outset a sort of a package deal, so to speak, and it was quite beneficial because obviously they were looking for female doctors around that time to service a particular segment of the population there. So that worked quite nicely in our favor. One of the funny stories that I actually recall till today is when we got there, she got the official appointment initially, and my visa said Muhrem, housewife, not allowed to work. So I was on her sponsorship for a while, and yeah, we had a nice long laugh about that, and and sort of obviously got there, and then within a couple of months, I got permanently employed as well, and obviously from there, yeah, we stayed for many years. We both sort of did our own thing in Dubai. But yes, for the most part of our careers, we've always been lucky to be in and around the same hospital or clinic or whatever the situation may be.
Okay. And you guys, I know you did ER, emergency medicine. Did she do the same?
Yeah, so we both did that for a year or two. And then as you get to know the landscape, sort of back in 2012, although it wasn't that long ago, the expatriate, or let's call it westernized expatriate doctors, that they weren't that many. And so I got the opportunity to work for a South African pediatrician in Dubai in his private practice, so to speak. And then my wife stayed with the Mediclinic group for a long time, and then moved over to one of the other big healthcare providers in the area. But one of the other things that was so sort of peculiar of Dubai at that stage was multiple licensing authorities within the same city. So whilst we initially landed up in, for those of you that know Dubai, in Healthcare City, that was a specific license to practice medicine there. And that was actually considered to be the more difficult license at that stage to obtain. And then if you wanted to practice in the rest of Dubai, which is such a strange concept, then you had to be Dubai Health Authority sort of, license. And it was just a very, very peculiar thing. So you couldn't just, like in South Africa, jump from one clinic to another or quickly go and locum, because your employment visa was also tied to your place of employment. And so these processes, you need to sort of stay there for a while to get a lay of the land and understand what happens, and and sort of then you get these opportunities to
what do they call it? Wasta.
Bounce around. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Wasta. That's exactly correct. Even more, I mean, Abu Dhabi even though it's within the same country, that's a whole different medical license that you require. So, despite the fact that I've been there, or I used to be there many, many years, it was a restrictive environment. You couldn't just sort of bounce around and use opportunities or grab opportunities as they presented. But you learn to live with it, of course. And I can't say enough good things of my time in the Middle East. I thought it was a wonderful time in the country. It taught me a lot, it's the type of place that allows you to sort of build a dream, so to speak, and if you've got a bit of staying power, you can really become whatever you want. And we've got fond memories of our time in the
Just
Middle
a
East.
question. I know, with the kind of culture there where, male, female issues and so on, was it difficult to adapt to that in terms of your work? You said they recruited your wife specifically, but I always get the impression some people, only a woman can help another woman in some instances and so on. Was that culture difficult or not really?
I would say surprisingly not. So again, the clinics that I worked in, both Mediclinic and in this private clinic, they were very much styled to be westernized clinics. And so the individuals that frequented us most certainly wasn't just expats, but when it was when Emiratis would come to us, it was of a certain type of mindset, let's put it that way. And so it was really never a problem. There's actually some other nationalities that I found to be a bit more conservative and would prefer certain situations. But, I always tell people when they ask me, how must you behave, or how was it for your wife walking in the mall and stuff? And I always say, if you just sort of act normally in a decent manner, just like you would in Cape Town or, anywhere in South Africa, pretty much you'll be fine. There's obviously, sometimes we like to, enjoy a drink or two, but then you need to just sort of curtail that a little bit. You can't go crazy.
I think it's all about respect. I think if you're a guest in a country, you behave in a way that's acceptable. That's
exactly.
just, it doesn't go for Dubai, it goes for every place where you go.
Exactly. But I never had problems specifically with that in any case, in terms of the male female role. I will say what is, mostly I was working within the sort of the family medicine remit there. And I think whilst in South Africa, you would probably still do a lot more procedures, perhaps sort of be expected to do everything from men's health to women's health, etc., etc. I would say that there it was a bit more specialist led. At that stage, I was a general practitioner. And so, obviously we wouldn't be doing any women's health, for example. That would go to the specialists in that sense. So you kind of moved around those problems in any case. But it was never the case that I wasn't able to examine a person, for an upper respiratory infection or any such
And
thing.
Casper, where did you guys live in Dubai? Just a matter of interest. I know where Health City is. Where was your residence?
Yeah, so we lived all over. Initially, we lived Business Bay, right next to the Burj Khalifa. Then we lived in World Trade Center, so sort of right as you sort of almost start to shake up Sheikh Zayed Road. And then after a couple of years, we moved out to the desert. Jumeirah Village Circle is what it's called. Sort of moved into a villa.
How did you guys find the cost of living versus what you were earning, if you have to compare it to Cape Town, for instance?
Yeah, so I think Dubai is a very interesting city. I think it's also worth prefacing that it's been a while since I've left, but I always thought to myself that that's not a place where you want to go if you're not sure about what you're moving or getting yourself into. Unfortunately, even back when I was there were many stories of South Africans going over, thinking they'll get employed quickly, and then running up quite a significant amount of debt. I think it is fair to say that Dubai is an expensive city. However, if you stay for a while, you quickly sort of move up the ranks because of the fact that it's quite transient. And in that sense, I always felt that we did have money to save, despite the fact that schooling was expensive, housing was very expensive. Sort of I came after the era where companies would provide housing, etc., etc. So despite that, we still found it to be quite nice on the balance in terms of what is left over. And I think worth remembering is also that although you get paid in the dirham, it is essentially a US dollar currency because it's pegged to the US dollar. So essentially you paid in US dollar, and in that sense the exchange rate makes all the difference. I would also say that it is important to realize that you can live fairly cheaply in Dubai and then also live fairly opulently. So that was quite a interesting thing as well, where you can go and eat out in Satwa, at really cheap as chips, cheaper than South Africa. But you can go to just the mall and eat a burger and it will cost you, it's got foil on it and it will cost you several times what you would pay in South Africa. The other oddity for people that wasn't there, and that's always struck me as completely bizarre, is every place have this VIP section. So no matter where you go, whether it's the mall or the water park or wherever, there's always a VIP option. So if you are happy to pay a 15 or a 20% premium, there's somebody that will render that service where you don't have to stand in a queue. So that I always found to be quite fascinating and something much different.
I guess
than
that
South
was
Africa.
kind of maybe part of the culture, the Arab culture. But I recall going to that hospital, that Mediclinic hospital, when it was being built just in 2000. So, and they had a top floor that had a swimming pool and like a suite for the, if the Emirati prince or somebody was ever going to go there. It was like a whole, what do you call it, a penthouse. Is that right?
So I've got several stories on that floor. Yes. So again, it was still today, it's a concept that's completely foreign for South Africans. But yes, there was in this hospital on the top floor, if I recall, it was the 7th or 8th floor. It was the VIP section, and I'll just say no expensive spare. It doesn't look like, it doesn't resemble a hospital at all. The fittings, the doors, the portraits, everything is completely different. It's got its own private elevator to that section, and in a normal hospital you'll have the fittings for the oxygen or the monitoring. All of that would be covered behind sort of beautiful wood paneling. It's something to behold. It's something to behold. And I worked in a hospital, when one of the royalty was there, and a couple of days before, they'll get their caterers in and bring extra furniture, and then they'll do their thing, and then they'll go out again. It's bizarre. It's completely foreign to anything that I think we're used to, or ever sort of come
didn't
across.
The families
in
also
life.
spend time with them in the hospital? I think that was part of the reason why it was like a penthouse suite, because it's not just for the patient.
Yeah, and I always, so both my kids were born in Dubai, and there was a second hospital opened from the Mediclinic group, and we were sort of privileged enough to be afforded the opportunity to sort of stay in the VIP section, and it's phenomenal. So you have your normal hospital room, which is already sort of magnitudes of order bigger than a normal hospital room that you're used to, and then there was a door leading to a full apartment next to the room that my wife was in with showers and sort of a table for people to sit and eat. It is
No,
people can't
no.
believe when I show them the photos. It's interesting.
different.
It's interesting.
Cool. So let's get to Mauritius. Did you go straight from Dubai to Mauritius?
Yeah, so we went from Dubai to Mauritius. After a couple of years, we sort of thought let's do something different, and yeah, we went to Mauritius. Unfortunately, just as COVID struck, well, fortunately, unfortunately, and it was a wonderful time. I met some amazing people on the island. Still today, friends with a lot of these people, and yeah, it's Mauritius. It's an interesting place. I mean, I think it's important to say that any place that you live in, there's positives and negatives. I think COVID obviously painted or gave it a very specific slant, but I think I didn't quite realize how I would miss sort of bigger opportunities or bigger environments. And I mean, I played a lot of golf and spent a lot of time, on the beaches, and it was amazing. But it is a fragmented community in the sense that you've got multiple ethnicities: your Chinese, your Francos, your Franco-Mauritians, your Indo-Mauritians, Creoles. And so it's got something to get used to in that sense. People are extremely friendly, but I think the business opportunities are limited. I think that would be a fair assessment, and to perform business on the island, right? So sort of everybody goes there to, sort of take advantage of the tax situation. But I'm talking about generating business on the island, I think is difficult. Lots of regulatory oversight. And so, yeah, a little bit of a mixed bag.
And as a doctor, were you practicing in a normal practice there, or what was your...
Yeah. So I was practicing in a medical practice there. But again, they've got a government system. So most of the Creole, not the Creole, most of the Mauritian population would visit the public hospitals. At that stage, I think there was about 1 million people, of which only sort of 200,000 medical aid. And so the private healthcare sort of offering, or let's say demand, is relatively fragmented and relatively small. And then you still need to compete as a expatriate doctor with local physicians that are private. And so I think the buying power ultimately just wasn't quite there.
What you're saying is it's an interesting opportunity, but not a lifetime opportunity.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, again, wonderful place if you can organize your business in such a way that you can live there and travel, or whatever the case may be, and sort of earn the majority of your income outside of the island. I mean, it's spectacularly beautiful and all the rest. And even again, just in the last couple of years, I think the amenities have been sort of increasing quite a bit. So it's a great opportunity, but it's small. I think it's small and it's a small population. And I think one must be aware of that, and it wasn't the right fit for me during that part of my career.
Were you guys in Port Louis, or where was the
So just south, in the west coast, Tamara and Black River.
And then the decision to return to South Africa. Sorry, let me just stop there. So you actually spent COVID on the island or in South Africa? Oh, you were in? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a funny story about this. So Mauritius had an interesting lockdown policy. They had these hard lockdown situations where literally I think there was one period where it's either a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember, where nobody was allowed to move, not to the shops, nothing. You were sort of locked into your house. But because I was a medical doctor and registered, I got a specific sort of pass that I could put in front of my window. Something that's testimony to the wonders of Mauritius and the island living. Sort of there was this little barter system that started to develop amongst the neighbors, and so sort of obviously luscious green tropical island. So some people had bananas, some people had avocados, and one of my friends was a baker, and so he was able to procure some flour. I was the go-to person driving for a medical emergency, but sort of facilitating this illicit trade and bartering system within a period of confinement. And that was, and I was pulled over by the police once, and in my sort of very, very rudimentary French, had to explain that. I was on a house call,
It's
So,
like in the Winelands during COVID, there were guys transporting wood, but it was on top of boxes of wine because booze was illegal. Everybody, the human race is quite clever, we have to say. So after COVID, when did you return to South Africa?
So we came back in September, sort of March of 2022. And I think perhaps it's just worth saying that I've always sort of wanted to specialize, but just never really had the opportune time, and obviously you don't just specialize, you have to apply. It's a post, so it's not just quite as simple as, okay, I'm deciding to specialize. But I felt that, I've seen the world. We've, sort of traveled extensively, lived in many places. And it was just sort of I just feel like it was the right time to come back home. My children was sort of no longer sort of babies. And, it's nice to be home with the family, see the cousins, sort of catching up on Christmases and birthdays and special occasions that we've missed for 12, 13 years before. Sort of that, I mean, I've seen a couple of the podcasts and people always say it's our people. And I couldn't agree more. There's just something very mystical, strange about landing back, in Cape Town and sort of handing over that green mamba that you've swed at many times before in your travels, but they say welcome back, or there's something I can't explain it, but I mean it really is truly special. And I think that was definitely the feeling that we had when we came back.
It's so unfortunate that there's this, what do you call it, the political hierarchy that's causing South Africa to have a horrible name in the world, because the people all just want to have a good life, and in general people are good people, but it's very sad that there is that impression outside. But yeah, and so you're doing occupational medicine, is that right? Maybe explain to us just what that is.
So, you need to be careful to give me this invitation because I'm extremely passionate about what I do, but I'll try and keep it short. Occupational medicine is quite a unique speciality. There's less than about 50 specialists registered in the whole of South Africa, so it's extremely rare. And essentially what we are interested is in the effect of your work on your health and health on your work. Now, all of this is backed up by or underwritten by legislative processes. You need to have a strong understanding of especially the labor legislation, and then several other principles. And then what we do is risk management. And we focus on the cohort that is the working population. And this is becoming sort of more and more important as we see an aging population that is working, sort of longer and longer, as well as compliance, compliance issues being enforced by our labor department, as it should. So, that's in a nutshell
so you
what
almost
it is.
Done with your studies, is that correct?
Yeah. So thesis is done. Now it's just literally a examination a month from now, and then
Well,
yeah, hopefully
congratulations.
that's that.
And what's the next step for you?
So, I think this is perhaps ties nicely into the podcast in that I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that, there's a multitude of opportunities abroad and in South Africa. But, if I can design my own future, I would like for nothing more than to stay on at the hospital where I'm at. I'm at Tygerberg Hospital, big academic hospital where we truly make a difference. And perhaps also for the listeners out there, everywhere I turn, obviously I can only speak for the Department of Health, but everywhere I turn, I'm just faced with excellence. And I think the struggles that you see is a resource demand mismatch. It's not a competency problem. That's not the issue. It's a resource demand mismatch. And it's amazing to work amongst colleagues and people that do just world-class things. And it's, again, I left in 2012, and it's just, I remember the negative naysayers. I remember people saying, oh, the education, the medical education is down, the quality of our doctors aren't the same. And, I'm now old and wise enough. I've worked with physicians from Stanford and Harvard and Oxford and, sort of all over the world. And I can say confidently that South African physicians, I would say, is top 3, if not the top in the world, literally. And it's so nice to come back and just be hit in the face with the excellence everywhere, and I won't bore the listeners with examples, but just trust me when I say to you that there's competency abound. And I think it's nice to be able to still make such a big difference as well. And so, there's economic realities and there's certain niche examples that, that necessitates that one must sometimes look outside of the borders. So one of my sub areas of interest is ionizing radiation. So sort of the health effects of radiation. And obviously we only have one nuclear station in South Africa. I think apart from Egypt, there might only be one in Africa. So you obviously have limited opportunities in certain very specialist fields. But apart from that, your ability to make a difference here is unmatched versus the rest of the world. And I think that for anybody that is able to make it work in South Africa, I am hard pressed to think of another country that just all round scores as high as South
That's very
Africa,
interesting,
in my
and
opinion.
it's great to hear that it's so positive. In one of the conversations, and I don't know if you know Graham Cosgrave, the guy I spoke to, you can go, and he said that that's the thing that's so attractive about South African doctors is that the guys have a can-do attitude, and they go wherever they go in the world and they make things happen. They don't sit and wait, because that's just the nature of the beast, and that's why the people are so successful abroad. So it's great to hear that is still there in South Africa, and that it's very positive for the country. You've almost kind of answered my question, where I was going to say, for a young South African doctor looking at leaving in 2026, what would you say? And
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that we have to admit to one another. Okay, so there's a particularly strange problem developing in South Africa where we've got, and I think it's important to highlight this issue, we've got many young doctors that are unemployed in South Africa. As bizarre as that might sound, that's the reality on the ground. And I think it behoves our politicians to look at that urgently. That's the one thing. The second thing, one of my very, very good friends told me once, there's always room at the top. And so I would say if you make the choice to stay, you just need to know that you're going to need to outwork the person next to you. And I don't think that's a particularly South African challenge. I think that is a universal truth that holds water wherever you go. And then thirdly, I would say if there is such a thing as sort of choosing the right way, one of the things that I will forever be grateful is that I did go overseas, especially when I was younger. Like Dubai, for that fact, where I was exposed to 200 different nationalities, and you get to see what other people do, what excellence looks like around the world. You get to see what other cultures do, and I think it just sort of opened me up to the fact that our problems aren't unique and our achievements aren't unique, you know, and I think that South Africans to me sometimes feel like they think that we're the only place that can achieve greatness, but we're also the only place that suffers with corruption or suffers from corruption or suffers from any other ailment. And that's simply not the case in my estimation of from what I've seen. So all in all, I would definitely say to a young doctor, if you've got the opportunity to go, but because of a explorer mindset. Run towards something, not run away from something. If your opportunities arise within South Africa, you will be well suited to grab it with both
Great
hands.
advice. Last question. You guys are back in South Africa now for almost the fourth year. What's that been like? Was it kind of easy to adapt to life back in South Africa? And it's 10 years since you'd left. So how was that for you and the family?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that we do miss is the strength of the international currencies. So that's certainly something that we are missing. My kids are doing well, adapting well at school. They speak English, so the Afrikaans is sometimes a little bit of a problem. But for myself and my wife, we were lucky enough to sort of pick up old friendships and old connections. And I love it. And I like the fact that it seems to be, again, I might be too much of an optimist, but there seems to be a positive energy, especially around Cape Town. Yeah, I don't know. The red wine is as beautiful as it always was, and the steak on a Friday and Saturday night is still as juicy, if not more, than anywhere else in the world. I'm just loving it. I love every moment of it, and long may it continue. And again, like I said, if I can choose my future, I'm not moving from Cape Town.
Casper, thank you so much. That was really, really so insightful. I really enjoyed that, and just exploring different locations and coming back to South Africa and adding value. Thanks very much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. And, I think it's also worth saying thank you for the work that you do in terms of highlighting these stories. Sort of as a last sort of thought, South Africans need to do better at celebrating the feel-good stories and the good outcomes. I think that's something we can do a bit more of, and your platform definitely highlights that. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
I appreciate it, Casper. And to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. You can also find more episodes of the Relocated South African on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.